I'm picky with my chicken. The skin has to be cooked just right. The meat needs to have more white meat than dark. And, when it comes to the gristle and tendons, I pass. But, I've had people comment that, I leave a lot of meat on the chicken bone. That's probably not going to change, because like I said, I am picky with my chicken. And the interesting thing is that, I've been with others, who would eat that gristle, the tendons, they would gnaw on the end of that bone. I've seen some like bite off the end and suck the marrow out, and just lick that bone clean. You know, to me that's just wrong. But I guess to each their own. So now you might be wondering, what does chicken have to do with your business? Well, really everything. When consuming any business advice, if it's from me through books, the internet, other business owners, from your broke brother-in-law, think about a bucket of chicken. I'm Brian Hill. I've owned multiple businesses for the past 20 years. And this chapter is about learning how to consume content, evaluate advice, and really just think for yourself without becoming a robot, copycat, or a follower of someone else. This is chapter 26, grab a bucket of chicken. Many people like to bring snacks on their journey. They'll stop out, say, at their favorite restaurant on the way. Most of the foods that are brought, they'll be fully consumed, while others will not. And, if you happen to, say, pick up a bucket of chicken, there'll be some parts of that chicken left over, at least I hope, bones and gristle. Like I said, when it comes to chicken, I'm picky. The skin must be cooked just right. The meat needs to be more white than dark. And when it comes to gristle and tendons, I don't get around them. So I leave a lot of chicken behind. Like I said, where I've seen others eat down every bite and lick the bone clean, bite the end off, suck the marrow out. So it'd be the same with consuming any business advice, whether through books, the internet, other business owners, or even from your broke brother-in-law. Think about them as a bucket of chicken. Chances are you will not be consuming everything in that bucket. You pull out say a piece of chicken out of your bucket, and you need to first remember who gave you that chicken. If it was a lady next door with 14 cats inside her house, I personally would not be interested in eating it at all. If it was from a clean older lady's home across the street, or from a reputable restaurant, in a nice part of town, I wouldn't have any problem trying it. But I would consume what I found to be useful. Think about all of your business advice just like that, just like a piece of chicken, including this video. If the person has no business or does not have a business that should be replicated, do not listen to them, unless it's to do the opposite of what they say. Their chicken might not be worth consuming. If I decided to try the chicken, I would then need to choose if I'm going to consume everything. If the chicken was great, and let's say chicken tenders, then I would probably consume it all. If the chicken has bones, at minimum, I'm leaving the bones. If the chicken was cooked poorly, I might not eat the skin, and I'm only eating, the good parts. I'm going to poke around. I'm going to leave a lot of meat on the bone and the gristle and tendons and stuff like that. So, others will bring, say, some value. There could be a book that you read that's kooky, but every now and then that author really nails it. I got a few authors that I can think of that every now and then he just says something kooky, but he just says a lot of good stuff. So in a case like that, take a bite of the chicken, enjoy it because it brings you value, but, leave that kooky stuff out. Leave that chewy, gristly stuff alone. Don't go near it. Most every piece of content it could be used for something, to benefit your business. So look for that one bite of meat that brings value. Other times you will consume content and it's exactly what you're looking for. It helps you grow your business. Think of that as the perfect tasting piece of chicken. You search for all the meat that you can get, and man, you really want more because it's so good. And so maybe if you dare, you gnaw on the bone. Keep going back to it. Taking what you want, seeing if you can get more. But still leave the bone. Remember to leave the bone. Do not consume everything, because you should think for yourself and not be a robot that just takes everything that he hears and accepts it. Think for yourself. Decide if the information that you hear is see if it needs to be consumed. So consume the content so you can learn, but remember to think for yourself and process all the information. We don't want copycats or people doing what others are doing. Take the good meat, consume it, learn from it, grow, add your personal touch to it, and then, just continue eating other chicken, but spitting out the bones. Like I said, I still leave a lot of meat on the bones. I don't care. I'm picky about my chicken, and, that's not going to change. And you know what? You should be picky about your business advice too. You're a broke brother-in-law who's never ran a successful business. He has opinions of what you should do. The internet is full of gurus who've never really built anything. There are books written by people who got lucky once, and then they think they've figured the formula out. There are podcasts and courses, masterminds, coaching programs. Everyone has advice. But, here's the truth. Most of it has some value. Even the cat lady that was next door, her chicken might have one good bite of meat, if you pick the hairs off it and look hard enough. But, you have to be discerning. Do you want to go down that road? So here's how to consume business advice. Say, looking at it like a bucket of chicken. Do they have a business worth replicating? Have they actually done what they're teaching, or are they just repeating what they learned from someone else? If the source is questionable, be very careful of what you consume. If the source is solid, dig in, but still use discernment. Second, decide what to consume. Not everything in that bucket is for you. Some advice is chicken tenders, perfectly cooked, easy to consume, exactly what you need. Eat it all. Other advice has bones. There's good meat, but you have to work around the structure. Take what's useful, leave the bones. Other advice has, let's say, more gristle and tendons, maybe chewy, hard to digest. You have to poke around, to find the good meat. Or you might even be ahead just to look elsewhere. Third, just make sure you think for yourself. Don't be a robot. Even the best piece of chicken that you've ate, it still had a bone in it. Leave the bone. Don't consume everything just because someone successful said it. Process the information. Think for yourself, so you can add your personal touch. Make it yours. I've read hundreds of business books. Some were terrible, but I found one good idea in most all of them. And that one idea, changed how I thought about business, or maybe even how I did business. Some of them books were fantastic, but there were still parts I didn't agree with, or that I didn't apply to my situation, even though it seemed solid. This is a video. This video is from my book. Business is a journey, not a destination, and this journey is your life. It's chapter 26. Grab a bucket of chicken. And, it's no different with my book here in my video. Consume what works well and toss out the rest, spit out the rest. And, that's okay. That's how it should be. Eat the chicken, spit out the bones, think for yourself. If this resonated with you, hit the like button, subscribe. I'll be releasing all chapters from my book right here on this channel. Next chapter, we'll be talking about how at times you open your wallet and moths fly out, and other times it's nice and fat. So until then, consume content, learn, grow, but always think for yourself on your business journey. Thanks for watching.